Big up me own, yeah. Big up me home. Me no want hear nothing but
Good morning, good morning, good morning. You're in tune to Win FM 98.9 on your radio dial. It's a beautiful Friday morning. Oh, it is one of those mornings that you wake up to and you say, thank God I'm alive. It's great to be here. Nature at its best in St. Kitts and Nevis. The air, the wind is blowing in the perfect, it's not too cold, it's not too windy, it's just perfect. The sun is out in all its glory again. The temperature is perfect. It's not too hot, it's just cool. And the sun, when it hits on the lush greenery that we have in some small areas, and you have the contrast of looking at the brown areas, it is beauty at its best. And that's what we enjoy here 365 days a year in St. Kitts and Nevis. So those of you who would have given up this for greener pastures, well, unfortunately, it's still green here, and we are so comfortable. COVID is a threat. We know that for a fact. But in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are living like normal. We're not having the cruise ships in that we should have been having just around this time. The planes are not coming at they're accustomed to. But at the end of the day, we are quite comfortable. We have health. We have strength. We have all that it takes to make life comfortable here in St. Kitts and Nevis. A lot of us are not working, but it brings out the creative mindset in all of us. And I like the way how we have adapted to the situation of COVID. People are just doing what they have to do. We understand that it's not anything that anybody had control over. It's a situation where we have no control, and we have to just make the best of it. And we have to be our brother's keepers. We see that comes out even more where you have neighbors are becoming families, and people are trying to help people in situations, where you can help. And please, we have to understand that all of us are impacted by COVID-19, and that all of us are feeling the squeeze, and the strain is for all of us to bear. So we ask those who are in a less or least position than some of us are in to understand that we can't always give, because at the end of the day, it comes down to management and taking into consideration that you two have a family. But if you can give, please do generously. God is going to help you. He has blessed you so that you can bless others. And I suppose that's what most of the Christians would say. So let's all be Christians in that realm, and we can do things that we can make sure that our brothers are looked after. My name is Sandra Queeley. I am the host for this morning's program. As usual, it's Your Views. Your Views is a program that is aired on Win FM every Friday morning around this time, 10 o'clock. Not around this time, 10 o'clock. And we go from 10 to 11 is a program where we talk about things that affect us here in St. Kitts and Nevis and around the world that would have some impact on us the same way. For those of you who have information that you can pass on that can make some of us so wiser, we encourage that. Sometimes we open the lines and we can call in. And sometimes we have people who can give information that's necessary and clear up situations or confusions that needs to be cleared. Like for me this morning, I have on the line it's a woman that I've just gotten to know about, and I'm starting to admire a whole lot. I've seen what she does. You talk about people who are silently, not deadly, but silently effective, who says little, but her presence makes such a loud sound when she's there, and people are looking up to her. And I'm quite comfortable, the questions that you have to ask. And let me tell you, I'm doing this because I'm a woman, and I just love to see women who would have put themselves in positions that people always feel it's a man's job, and especially in positions where you definitely think it's a man's job. And we show you that we are the hands that rock the cradle. We are the ones that raise the men who are placed in positions over us. And so it's a pleasure for me to have her this morning on my show. I've had her one time. She was just coming into the position that she's in. Now that she's seasoned in, I suppose she has more information that we can talk about. I do hope she's still on the line. Good morning, Janice. Miss Daniel Hodge. Are you there?
Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Cruz Atherton. I am here. Stay on the line as long as it's necessary.
Great.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Can I call you Janice or Honorable soon to be? But I tend to, you have to figure out what people, because some people like to be called a certain thing, but I just like, for me, I like Janice. I have a sister by that name, and, I like Janice, people who are called that.
Yeah, I like people to be comfortable around me, so whatever makes you comfortable.
Okay, great. Welcome to Your Views. I've seen that you're the leader of the NRP, Nevis Reformation Party. Now you're getting close to an election, and I've sat around and I wanted to see what your intentions were, because it was going all around that NRP is basically out of the race. But in such a short time, you feel that energy now that you all are not down, you're not out, but you were supposedly planning, because now I'm seeing what is happening is that you've come back with the men was not doing the job. The men were not doing the jobs that they were supposed to do. So it's an all-women thing, is it?
It's not an all women's thing. It's really a group of people that have come together. We were quite focused and deliberate in terms of the persons who would be representing the Nevis Reformation Party in the upcoming elections. We really wanted people who are committed, people who have that drive, and really, most importantly, people who recognize that we are all equal as human beings, and that we must look after our brothers and our sisters when necessary. And so it's really a matter of putting a team together that best represents what Nevis stands for, and how we can best bring back to Nevis the level of respect and the level of concern and caring, and most importantly, the prosperity that we know Nevis is so much capable of bringing for itself, rather than having to be dependent and entirely dependent on others.
Oh, that was such a good introductory speech. It was, and let me tell you, I've been listening, and I like politics. I like politics for what it stands for. I have questions. Sometimes I question politicians, though, and the things that they do, and the promises that they've made, and the way they use us as the electorate. It was Dr. Bartlett, I think she was the one who she was the last person that you would have introduced.
Correct.
It is, what's her last first name? Patricia Bartlett, is it?
Dr. Patricia Bartlett.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett. And she made a statement that I've always wanted to talk about. It's about bribery and giving bribes. And at the end of the day, when you give bribes, then you expect, that's basically what you expect to do throughout your tenure, is that if you're going to pay people to vote for you, then you'd always have to be paying people after they would have voted for you. I think I hope that is the way she was saying it, because we see that a lot in politics, where a lot of politicians feel like, if I can give you $150, like now is the most popular time for politicians, because election is around the corner. So they're gonna sit around, they're gonna have domino games, they're gonna have cooking competitions, they're gonna be in everything and everything, so that people can see them. They are part of the community now would see you. You drive with your windows are down, you stop and you talk to the ordinary man during this time, because it's time that you're hoping that they would see you as human and they would vote for you. I've had a problem with that. And when she came out as a politician herself, or somebody who wants to get into the arena and would make statement like that, I was like, wow, it really takes a woman to come out and say things like this. Because I think it's time now that we stop doing that. It's not about buying and paying for votes.
Yeah, well, what I would say, I mean, you mentioned the domino competitions and the bingos and different things that people would do, and really, I have no problem with those sorts of activities. At least it provides an opportunity for the small bar owners and shopkeepers to entertain and have a group of people who are having fun. Really, it's in a way providing an opportunity for people to have some fun time, but at the same time earn some money. For a number of those persons playing dominoes, that is something that they probably would look forward to get a honest dollar in their pocket.
Yeah, but I'm talking about it's. I don't mind that. I love it, because you build community spirit. It's a lot of things that happen positive that come from it. But I'm saying this should be an everyday, not an everyday, an all year round thing, not when it's coming up to election. Because you see all of these things, people are now, you're trying to bring the community together around times like these. If you're going to have an annual domino competition, or is it an annual event, I could understand that. But when you have these things that are happening because election is coming up, I have a problem with that.
Well, yes, I mean, anything that someone does, really, it has a lot to do with the motive. And if someone is organizing an event for community building and to, relieve some stress, etc., that is fine. The problem comes in is that when there is an ulterior motive and you're really using or taking advantage of people. You mentioned Dr. Bartlett's comment, and essentially, we've all heard and where that there's this pay for vote type of mentality, and the problem that we have with that mentality is that we're having a generation of people who are actually thinking that that is the way it is supposed to be. That this is what politics is about, and we in the NRP. We have taken a position. People must be able to understand what is wrong and what is right. And what we are seeing, without getting too political, is where you're getting very blurred lines. And what's wrong, because it seems to be so commonplace, and you have ministers of government being engaged, then people start to think, well, okay, this should be okay, this is all right, and this is acceptable. And what we have said is that no, people must vote based on the what a candidate can bring to the table in terms of contributing to the development of the country. Persons should vote because they feel that a candidate has better ideas, has a clearer vision as to how we can move the country forward. What we realize is that persons have become, almost at a point where they have very little means or ways of gaining employment, and so they are so eager to accept monies when it's around the time of election that they feel almost, well, this is what we have to do, this is what we need to do. We're saying when you create an environment where people are gainfully employed, where people do not feel that they would be victimized if they express their views or express their interest in a particular political candidate, then it makes for a much more healthy type of nation building, and we would all benefit in the long run, because then people would be getting into office based on what they can do to develop the community or the island on a whole, and then people would be forced to perform rather than just sitting back doing nothing all year. And when it's almost time for an election, you see a flurry of activity, and as you said, to ensure that people can see them, to ensure that there's some way to get people to buy into a small moment of what seems to be generosity, but really it's just a matter of people being used at that time.
And you have said it perfectly. It is something that I've looked at over the years, from all of my life that I've been looking at politicians and politics. I've seen that where you become very important when politicians need you, and that is about a year before an election. Everything starts happening. You have town hall meetings, you have the ministers they start opening constituency meetings. People now have a chance to come and talk to you and tell you of all the problems that they've had, and you see how you can assist, and after that will be done. And that's why everybody time it. It's a time in which people, the electorates wait and see, okay, and a year before then, let me go and start asking for things. And that's the only time that you get things. And I just find it is a wrong thing to do, because there's some people who have much more money than you. Your idea is to go in and look and see where the areas of deficiency and see how you can do, because you have the know-how to fix these things. But because you didn't have the money at that time, the $150, because it's as cheap as that vote to go, or the $10,000 to buy outboard motors, or things like that, you are not given the chance. And I just think it is a time where a party should stand up for this and say, at the end of the day, it's about everybody benefiting. It's about you having an understanding of what is wrong in Nevis and how you can fix it or address it. And these are the things that you want to hear politicians are talking about, not the old rhetoric about let me not say that, about the old rhetoric that you have. People are slandering people's name, talking negative about people. You don't want to hear that. We are in a crisis, and we want to know who is better able to take us out or carry us through the crisis. You understand? And
well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the NRP at this point in time, obviously, I mean, you mentioned, you started speaking about the candidates. We now have 4 female candidates and 1 male candidate. Actually, his name is Rohan Isles. He will be launched tomorrow, Saturday evening at the Hard Times in Gingerland. And if you have to look at each of the candidates and look at what the Naval Reformation Party stands for in terms of integrity and industry and inclusivity, etc., you will recognize that based on the conditions that we're experiencing right now with, the pandemic and very struggling economy, you really have people who can bring new ideas and new ways of generating income. Yeah. And you must realize that once you're looking at developing a country, you must look at the likely investments, and not necessarily just about money, dollars and cents, so to speak. We must be able to recognize how is that investment, how is that development going to be beneficial to the community, to the environment, to the social development as well. And once you are a people-focused sort of party, there's some parties that focus on the economy. Focus on the economy, they just really focus on dollars and cents. And so there is no issue in digging up the same road 100 times because it's just dollars and cents passing through. When you have people at the fore of your decision making, you're not going to be concerned about digging up the same road 100 times. You're going to be concerned with how can you create opportunities to enhance the lives of those people in the area. And so if it's setting up, businesses or where you can create employment, and we're not looking at, short-term, here today, gone tomorrow. We're looking at long-term opportunities where you can develop industries in areas where you can create meaningful employment for our citizens. And so you really have to draw the line and understand, are we a government about just the economy, or we are a government that understands that we must be able to lift the standard of living for all of our citizens as well, and how best do we do that? And so those are some of the things that we would have to look at. At this particular time, we're looking at the issues or the impacts associated with COVID-19, which has impacted so many women who work in the fields, in a very large amount. And so rebuilding from COVID-19, definitely we must have a woman's perspective at the table. I mean, we understand what it is to have to rush to get children ready to go to school. We understand what it is to have to try to find lunch money for them. We understand what it is to be able to find, how are we going to clothe them, etc. And so mothers, and not just mothers, parents as a whole, it's a very struggling time for all of us. But we must be able to put ourselves in their shoes. We must be empathetic and be able to understand what can we do that can make life better for these struggling parents and families right now. And that would be at the fore of our decision making, not necessarily how can we get some investment. Where is the investment? How will it benefit it? You bring in industries and you create maybe employment for 6 persons, and we're okay. No, we have to be able to look at the type of mass employment that we need to be able to have, where people could start to begin appreciating and understanding and having hope for, saving towards their homes and this sort of thing.
Yeah, because we as we can see, COVID has affected our tourism industry, and we have recognized where we were leaning towards. We became a tourism dependent country, and because of the fact that COVID-19 has affected travels and stuff like that, people are now we are seeing what has happened. The hotels have closed, and you talk about mothers, and I like the fact that you said that about mothers, because the type of environment that we have here, social environment, we recognize we have lots of single mothers, and they're the ones who have to fend for their children and it's the life that we live here, the culture that we have here in St. Kitts and Nevis, where we have a lot of single mothers who are working, and most of those people would have found themselves in the hospitality industry, and lots of them are home now. They can't afford to feed and raise their children. The children still have to go to school, and it's about changing the mindset of what we are accustomed to, understanding that life is not going to be the same way. The things that we were dependent on, we're not going to have it. And so as a new party coming into power, because you have never been in office, but I think that you would have experienced, and you have seen and understand the hardship of what's happening in Nevis at this point in time. Because when you look at the economy, everybody talking about building economies. You're talking about boosting up the economy, and by having a vibrant economy, people would be benefiting. But at the end of the day, we have to still I like what your concept about making sure that people can find work, getting industries that are going to come from operating here, because we see these people go to the to other countries. People say, oh, it's cheap labor, but look at what the Chinese are doing though. They do the same thing. They come here, they bring their own people, and yeah, it's cheap labor. They call it cheap labor, but they're benefiting from our economy. So we have to see now how we are going to place our own people, our own citizens, and that is what I'm waiting to see. So hearing you talk about it gets me very excited, because we have to start looking at how we are going to help our own citizens, the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis.
You see, one of the things that we have to look at is how the world is changing.
Yeah.
And we cannot sit back and feel we're a small island. Just yesterday, I think I heard on the news where one of the largest car manufacturers in the U.S. is going to be sending jobs over to Mexico. And jobs over to Mexico, why? Because they're now investing in electric vehicles. And so you have, new materials that you would need to be developing. And obviously they find it to be much cheaper to use labor in Mexico than the U.S. Now, on one hand, yes, you are dealing with the issues of climate change, and so you're considered to be a good corporate citizen. But at the same time, which is something I think President Biden would not be very happy about, is that a large number of jobs would be
going over to Mexico,
from the U.S. going to Mexico. Now, one of the things that I find that we are in a position to do here in Nevis, and I say especially Nevis, is to create the type of environment that would attract businesses, foreign investment. And when you look at the government right now, the NIE, and you look at the type of ordinances that they have brought forth, you're not seeing anything that is proactive. You're not seeing anything that is going to be appealing to anybody, that would even make anybody want to have a look. You see a lot of emphasis on sand and sea tourism, but thinking outside of the box. I mean, we've talked so much about climate change and the need to adapt and the need to mitigate, but you're not seeing where an environment is being created. And I must go back to even the geothermal ordinance. Now, we have certain rights in the Constitution where we can develop our ordinances to develop Nevis in a way that we would want to, without having to sit back and say, oh, it's the federal government's responsibility. So putting ordinances in place that would be appealing. And, people say, oh, don't talk about your ideas because they may copy it. But, it's very easy for people to talk about things. But to actually sit down and have the right focus and understand exactly, have the vision of where you want to go, then it's not going to be that easy to just say it and think it's going to be done.
Yeah, people, even if you say it and people don't have an idea of what you're trying to say, they can't copy it. It was not the idea. They don't know how to do it. So you can say it, and they would try to do it, but they don't know how.
Right. So just to show, when we look at when we were trying to move forward with geothermal energy, and we had the necessary ordinance in place to be able to advance geothermal energy, We did not have to sit back and wait on the federal government to say, well, if you want to do geothermal, wait until I'm ready to tell you to do it. No, the NIA at the time, which was the NRP-led administration, put the necessary ordinances in place, which we have the authority to do under the Constitution. Now, we see people doing different things and would want to say that we are actually advancing and developing. But it's really just, breaking down and putting back what has been there. You're not seeing any new thrust, any new drive. What's going to be driving our economy? We have been on tourism and financial services for the last 30 years, if not more. And what new industry are we seeing? We're not seeing any. And it's not as if you can just sit back and whatever drops in your lap. You must have a plan. You have your vision, where you want to go, and then you go out and you pursue so that everything, you have this holistic approach to what you want to do. Not just sit back and whoever happens to pass by and say, oh, I think I want to do something here. You say, okay, thank you, without having any overall holistic approach to how you want to advance the country.
What happened to the geothermal program that was supposed to be, because everybody's looking at green energy and natural energy, and that was one of the sources of energy that they were going to use. Solar energy, we've seen that the solar farm is being done here in St. Kitts. What happened to the geothermal project that was supposed to be on stream and should have been in a completion state at this time?
Well, election is going to be coming up soon, so I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot about geothermal again and what has not been done. You have an ordinance in place. You have quite a bit of the preliminary testing, etc., done, and we've had investors who have expressed interest in partnering and pursuing the development of geothermal energy. But for some reason, this current government just cannot seem to broker a deal that would be in the best interest of the masses. And so where are we now with geothermal? In fact, I'm not necessarily advocating that geothermal, some people say geothermal has lost its appeal and luster at this time. It has been around for well over a decade, and as new technologies come on stream, St. Kitts, which would have been one of our greatest areas to distribute to, is now well advanced with solar energy.
Yeah.
And many of the other neighboring islands have moved on with their own projects. So whereas, one of the things, as I understand it with geothermal energy, the cost to get it up and running would only really make it be cost effective if you're able to distribute the power to neighboring islands. And if we have sat on it for all of these years and not able to provide it, timing is everything. And so when these neighboring islands needed that relief, and we've sat on it and people have moved on and done their own assessments of how they would want to move forward. So the geothermal right now would really need a reassessment to see how viable it would be in this current climate. And so, but had we done what we needed to do at the time, had NRP not lost the elections and come out of office, I can assure you that we would have been well ahead with regards to the production and distribution of geothermal energy. But now, it's not as if you can just say, well, once NRP gets back into government, we're going to pick up geothermal. No, you have to look at the time, and we're saying, times are changing, and we have to be able to be proactive and be responsive to the change around us.
I really like your honesty, though, Doctor. Daniel, it's exactly what it is. It has lost its luster because of the fact the time in which it was supposed to happen. And those are the information that I got about geothermal. It has to be cost effective, and one of the reasons that could have been is that if you were going to leak that into different islands, like you would have said before, and you very rightly said that St. Kitts has moved on. They're into a lot more of solar energy. I think they're constructing a solar energy farm, and everybody who you would have been selling to has found an alternative which I think is going to work. So geothermal is basically all that money that was invested has basically gone on the drain, is what you're saying? Oh,
Well,
wow.
I'm not saying that. It would have to be reassessed and reworked because geothermal production is not a it's not an inexpensive
Venture,
proposal,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and so to make it worth the while, I mean, I don't see where NRP would go into government and pursue an initiative that's going to be an additional burden on taxpayers.
Okay.
Sometimes you look at the amount of fossil fuels that we are bringing in, and there are different ways to work around it in terms of how you may be able to still reap some benefits from what you would have had put in place and going forward. Because youth empowerment is really a big issue. We have to be able to empower our youth, and we do have some basic information here that can be the start of some entrepreneurial drive for our youth. And so it's not that we would say, well, geothermal has lost its time and it's gone. We now have to come up with creative ideas based on what we have and how we can still make that whole concept of geothermal energy be beneficial to the people in Nevis.
Okay.
And that is something that we will be quite capable of doing, without necessarily having to take on the type of expense that would continue to burden our taxpayers for a long time.
Okay. You're coming in as a new party, very, very, very new. Your candidates they don't have the experience of being in ministerial positions. They have never been in government. I don't think any one of you, all of you, are basically very, very new to the whole politics and running a country concept. What areas in Nevis that you think that you can make a difference? Areas you think that CCM, the leading party, the government is not have neglected, that you think that NRP can make a difference, and not just can make a difference, but what are your plans? I know that you don't want to divulge a lot of information because you feel like people are going to copy it, but at the end of the day, people want to know why they would want to give you a chance in opposed to CCM. They always say, if it's not broken, why fix it? So if CCM is doing a good job, why people would want to put NRP in power?
I think you asked the right question. If CCM is doing a good job, because if CCM was doing a good job, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Okay.
Trying to change the trajectory in which Nevis is going. And so the era that we're living in now, we're looking at the digital era, and we see that most things are going, everything's dependent on your smartphone, your mobile apps, etc. And, I spoke briefly about companies in the U.S. that are trying to find labor in areas outside of the U.S. These questions are a bit difficult for me because the ideas are there, the know-how is there. But anyway, we can explore our telecommunications industry. Certainly with regards to education, we have quite a bit with regards to our natural resources that we can actually become or establish the type of centers right here in Nevis that could really have people coming, from across the Caribbean, etc. Once we've identified how we would want to be able to, expand our education. We've had the sixth form college, and really nothing new has been done with regard to education in Nevis with regards to, considering the tertiary level. And so, a number of our youngsters, they have to travel. Once they've finished school, they have to travel there are things that we can do with regards to education. Agriculture, I mean, this is something that we see a lot being done with regards to small-scale agriculture, but developing agriculture to where it's an industry, where, needs to be the go-to place for certain, crops produced, etc.
Yep.
Take it to a much higher level. We've gone through COVID-19. We know that we spent over $20 million on imports and importing products that we have the natural resources to develop here. It's just a matter of understanding how do you connect your sustainable development with creating employment opportunities for persons. I keep saying it's not just about what's going to bring dollars and cents. It's not just about the banks and the banking sector. You also must look at how are you going to be able to create these employment opportunities. And of course, the blue economy, that has to be one of the areas that is least exploited here in St. Kitts and Nevis and have, such huge potential for, again, generating livelihoods, etc. And so it's really a matter of what is your focus? What are you trying to do in terms of developing a country? And how do you bring everybody along? Leadership is not really about, just you and you trying to put things in place. It's about other people.
Compilations of all different ideas, yeah. Yeah, and I like where you're going with that. Let's just talk about agriculture. We look at a situation right now that we were so heavily dependent on the boats coming out of St. Vincent, Dominica, and the Windward Islands for our produce, like ground provisions and things like that. And it hurts me. It does. It's an irritation, if I may say so, when we see our people are waiting for these boats to come in. Now that St. Vincent would have this problem, Dominica had the problem because our honey depended on Dominica. Our ground provisions depended on was very dependent on Dominica. After the hurricane in Dominica, we recognized how we were suffering. We went to St. Vincent. St. Vincent now have these volcanic eruptions and all of the problems that they themselves are facing. And we find out the positions that we are in. And every time you hear the ministers of government talk, they talk about the fact that we are working on a robust agricultural environment. We want to make sure it's an industry where we can just not only serve our people, but we can look about making it a big industry. I'm not seeing that, honestly, because, number one, you're not going to have people who are going to manage their own farm, market their own produce. These are young people that you want to get in there who doesn't have the ideas of how to market, even how to plant. You're not seeing people who are coming in and having workshops and teaching people how to grow on a large scale. Everybody's just doing the same small scale thing. People are coming out and doing it. And we should not. I grew up in Nevis. Livestock farming was a big thing for us. Agriculture was another big thing for us because we had to grow our own foods. So it's something that we're accustomed to. Fishing was another big thing for us. All the fishermen came from Nevis. And so we understood that that was the era that I came out of. And we now realize that is where we have to go. But I'm not seeing government's influence on trying to build this into an industry in opposed to having it on a small scale. What is NRP intention for this?
Well, I mean, you start with a very basic. I would have said before, putting the necessary policies and legislative framework in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can you encourage farmers, even to have an effective cooperative where you can sit down and plan? Because really, while NRP is in a position where we can provide the framework and we can put the necessary infrastructure in place, you really have to be guided by the farmers who are there. We have to be able to listen to them, listen to their wants and their needs to be able to go forward. But when you have a situation in place where we speak every day about the importance of food security, but then you cannot manage the farmland. You have farmers conflicting with each other because you're going to give one farmer a piece of land to work and then still lease it to someone else.
Wow.
Or you're gonna lease farmland to someone, and because they're not on island, you feel like, well, okay, I can let somebody else use it. And then when there becomes conflict, you step back and you say, well, it's between them. But you're responsible for putting the necessary mechanisms in place. Nevis has enough land, an abundance of land, that we can sit down with our farmers and organize which section of the island is best suited for which type of crop, and develop, like I said, large scale. I mean, when you look at $20 million for importing crops that we can grow here, what is the excuse?
Wow.
So if you can't really even manage the farmland and manage a couple of farmers and small parcels of land to develop those lands, how are you going to be able to take it to the next level? And, I mean, we're very serious about organizing, having policies, ensuring that everything is standardized. What applies to Peter applies to Paul.
Yeah.
We're looking at who would have the capabilities in order to advance the agenda that we're looking at. It's not going to be a situation where you're my friend, so you can have this parcel of land to do your farm, and then if somebody else comes along, it creates a problem. No, everything has to be standardized. Everybody who has an interest in farming should have the same rules applied to them across the board. All of this discretionary use of power does nothing for developing the country. And so even when we look at the services that we procure, and you're not seeing where everybody has an equal chance to participate, those things are wrong. And so people feel forever that they have to be in gratitude. Ministers are supposed to provide a framework, provide a policy. You should not feel like a minister is doing you a favor because they allow you to occupy a piece of land.
And you have an obligation to them after that for the rest of your life.
Exactly. So the thing about NRP that we're looking at everything, we talk about inclusivity, we talk about integrity, and we don't use those words lightly. It means that we must put the necessary procedures in place so that each one who is capable has the same opportunity to advance as anyone else.
I like that keyword that you use, framework, and if we really want to look at agriculture in a large scale, we have to definitely start putting that framework in place, because I'm not seeing it. Honestly, I'm not seeing it, and I see areas where we can, instead of importing eggs, these are things that we grew up doing, raising fowls, and you said it, we have the land space, people can use it, utilize it. It's, for me, government has to make it affordable. I would always look at the fact that Development Bank can come up with low interest loans to help these people to start, because let's look at again milk. The importation of milk is a big thing. When we're accustomed to raise our cows and everybody's looking at organically grown foods, this is something that we do here. The pesticides, herbicides, the genetically modified foods that we are importing and we are using. We're accustomed of organically growing things because of the climate that we have. And I like the fact that you would have said you look at, to show that you're looking at things the way it should be looked at. You look at the different areas where you can grow certain food crops, and the other areas that you can grow other, and you have that. You have the land mass, you have the availability of land where you can actually do that. It's just for somebody to sit down, having an understanding of where you want to go with this, and come up with ideas and plannings and programs in order to really effect this thing, because we have to do it. This dependency on tourism is something that we have to change our mindset, because we saw what COVID-19 has done to the whole world, and so we have to start to look at things that we have control over. And for me, one of the areas that we have good control over is agriculture. You talk about the educational system. I have been looking at that for the longest while and wondering why we cannot introduce, and now here in St. Kitts we have students are going to school, and now you can have up to a bachelor's degree in nursing, and you have associate degree in certain subjects. And I want to know why we always have to send our children away to school. Why can't we start looking at how we can upgrade our educational system, because it's not every parent who can send their children to school overseas. It's not everybody, they don't have the necessary means, and it's all about securing scholarships, but then again, your children are basically on their own, and a lot of parents now are looking at the situation. We see children who are supposed to be away studying, who's home now because of the COVID situation, and the question we ask is, when is government going to start to look at situations like this and see how they can make certain changes and make a difference? And again, I'm going to use your word, the framework. We need to see this in place to show us the directions in where the government is going. And I do hope that NRP will bring something like that to the table.
Well, I mean, that is definitely what we realize is lacking. And, I mean, you cannot just run a country in a random fashion. We talk about agriculture, the importance of really taking agriculture to a much higher level. But you cannot just look at the agriculture and the crops. We have to look at the
manpower.
Well, the manpower and also the stray animals that we have.
Mm-hmm.
The donkeys, the monkeys. You know, there's so many areas where we can put our people to work in a meaningful way. At the end of the day, it may all come back to agriculture, or it may all come back to, let's say education. But having that holistic approach as to how you would want to educate, what are the opportunities that people would have to look forward to. If we really want people to come back and get away from this brain drain, then people must see what they would be coming back to. And so if you go out and you have an option, and you can study, let's say, agriculture, or you could study technology, you must be able to see, how can I use this when I get back home? And if that option is not there, then you're not going to have people coming back.
Well, you want to have that creative mindset too, because it's one of the things that we always fall behind, because the people who have gone away to study, one of the things that you realize is that they don't come back here. They stay where they're at. People find that they're so good, and they're giving them, people who live in the States, they give them their green card because they're so good. These are the people that you want to come back. We have one of the best neurosurgeons coming from Nevis and St. Kitts, the vascular surgeon, who lives in America and wouldn't come back because we don't have anything here to offer. So we have to start to look and see, why are we sending our people away, and then at the end of the day they're not coming back with their expertise, and so it's not beneficial to us. So it's about us now changing the whole way that we look at things and see how we can bring back these experts and could change the way that we are doing things. Because what I'm seeing and upsets me is that we have lots of foreigners who are coming here. They're more qualified than us, because our qualified people are overseas, and they're taking up residency here, and they're doing their own thing, and the money's not staying here because they're sending money outside from whence they came. The Chinese, you see the Chinese that they're doing that. They bring their own people in here. They take our monies and they send it back to China. And I'm asking the question, when are we going to realize what is really happening? We have to we have to invest more in our locals. If we need them to become more educated, then we have to do so. We have to provide that means. We can't invest in foreigners, because what they're going to do is that they're going to make their monies, and then they're going to go back from whence they came.
What I would say to that, I am someone, I believe very strongly in collaborating and leveraging resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe that the more diverse ideas that you can have, the more effective your solutions can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I go back to the necessary policies and ordinances that we need to have in place, so that whether it's the Chinese or the Guyanese or whomever comes here, we should be able to benefit from them being a part of our community, just as they're benefiting from our community. But if we do not take the time to sit down and see how best, what are these places known for? How can we collaborate? Yes, you have some, you may have the language barrier and different things like that, but we have to be able to understand what these people are bringing, what experiences they may have, that we can now take and incorporate in the development of our country. I think everybody, if you ask them, would want to contribute positively
And
to
I do.
any island that they live in. We in government, when we get in government, must create a type of environment where it's not them against us, where we're all working together to make Nevis the best that it can be.
But you
And I'm
see,
sure everyone would have a sense of pride knowing that I contributed to developing this island rather than being a part of a divisive and country that is falling apart.
and I do understand what you're saying, Dr. Hodge. But what I'm saying is this: is that I understand the collaborative working together, but what we're seeing is that, and I go back again to the Chinese. The Chinese are coming here. They are not. We would never learn any of the expertise because they're bringing their own. If you're bringing them here, then all people are supposed to be working with them, having an understanding of what they do and how they do it, and then they.
I don't mean to interrupt, but let me ask. I keep saying, if we do not take the time to structure the way that we would want our island, and I'm speaking specifically about Nevis right now, if we do not take the time to structure how we would want our island to develop, if it's a free for all. Of course, like you said, people are going to come in. They may be more educated than some of us here,
now you're talking.
etc. But it's up to us. It's up to us to determine how we would want our island. If we have our ordinances and our policies in place, who is going to come in and go against that?
Yeah, and this is what I want to see.
It's up to us.
I want to see us working in collaboration with, but at the end of the day, it's the investment in our citizens, because that is what is missing, and that is for what I advocate for. It's about the people of St. Kitts and Nevis not just taking a stance, but they're placed in position where they later on you can look to them for the future. You're going to learn. People come in, they're going to benefit because they're benefiting from us. But at the end of the day, the question you ask is how much are we benefiting from them? And that is what I want to see. I want to see that at the end of the day, that when we open our gates to all and sundry, the ordinances that we have in place that are adhered to, and at the end of it all, we can all say we would have worked together to create this, and our people would have benefited it. I'm not seeing the investment in our locals. I'm not seeing that at all. And it upsets me. You go on there's construction sites, and these people have good, you say, oh, they make the best, but all locals are supposed to be learning from them. They're supposed to be working, in tandem with them. They work together, and then at the end of the day, they can learn on the job, because they don't have, these people are coming from a background where you're taught this in school. Your education system is such that you're taught this as a skill. We don't have this here. And so we are bringing in people and hoping that our locals can benefit from them, but we are not seeing that. We are seeing our locals sitting home.
You can't just hope. You can't just hope. You
have to plan.
Do the work and put the systems in place to ensure that we could have a more harmonious type of community.
Great.
Right? So we cannot just hope.
Great, and that's what I'm.
And I always say, performance matters.
Right, good.
And that's what we mean when we say performance matters.
Great.
You have to perform. You have to put the systems in place. You cannot sit back and put one set of people against the next set of people, and that's not the way to run a country.
And without planning, you're going to have adversities, because that's what people are seeing. You have that, oh, you're from Jamaica, or you're from Guyana, you're not from here, because there's no proper planning in place, and the locals feels like they're basically put on the bench, and the foreigners are benefiting, which in truth and in fact, it's not supposed to be that way. If we've had proper planning where you just don't say, oh, these people have a right to be here because we have the freedom of trade movement there. We are supposed to have plans and structures in place that when these people come, our people can benefit. And that is what I'm looking forward to. And I'm glad that you would have said that, Dr. Hodges, that, it needs planning. And that is what it needs, planning. And I do hope that NRP will be able to put those plans in place, and that we can work together as a Caribbean people, realizing that we can come together and we can do things together, not in adversity, but in friendship and in love. And that is what we need to see here. That for us to recognize that we are Caribbean people and we can work together as one. But the locals are going to have a problem, because when they're sitting down and the foreigners are, because we call them foreigners now, because they're working and the locals are sidelined. And that is one of the issues. And I appreciate the fact that I look up to you as a leader, one that have ideas and understand where planning is the major thing that has to be in place. You have to have plans in order for us to reach to the point that we're supposed to reach.
Yes, and that's why we say change that we need because we're not seeing Nevis living up to its full potential, and understanding the principles upon which we operate in NRP. I think this is the time where we must make that change now in order to put Nevis back on the right path.
Janice, it was a pleasure. It was really, it's always a pleasure, and I definitely would want to talk to you again because you know why? Because you're saying what I've been hoping that people would have said. People, not just people, but people who wants to be in leadership role, who would recognize the cry of the ordinary man, recognize the hardships that we have been going through for the longest while, and now you have come up with ideas and plans that you think that is absolutely necessary, that has to be in place. And this is what you want to hear from politicians, the plans that you're going to, you have in place to put what you have in place, and not just saying what you think should be done, because just thinking and saying it is not going to work. You have to say, how you're going to effect it and what plans you have in place. And I like that. I like you. Like I said, your keyword is framework, and just knowing that you understand, why it's so important to have frameworks and ordinances in place and how to abide by them, and structures is one that gives me hope that Nevis can move even further in the future as an independent, small little island that it is. A country that I love. Is the country from where I was born, and I do hope, I would love to see Nevis, in a more independent position than what it is right now.
Yes, and let me add to that, because while we understand that we are a federation and the responsibilities of the federal government to Nevis, we also understand fully that we have a constitution that allows us to do so much for ourselves here in Nevis. We just have not been using it to the extent that we ought to. And so, yes, I always say the relationship with the federal government is very important. They have certain responsibilities, and but we also can do a whole lot to help ourselves. And if we just sit back each month and just depend on what we would get from the federal government, then of course, that's not sustainable, and we will not be able to realize the full potential that we have as a people of Nevis.
Girl, I just look up and realize that I've really overdone this. I didn't realize it was so late. We are definitely out of time. It was a pleasure having you, and I have to face the music. I think I'm in big trouble at this time, but it's what it is. I did realize time would have flown so quickly. We're definitely out of I do hope that you reserve some space, and that I will call on you again, and that you would say yes, and that we can have this discussion going, because it's information that people need to know. People are getting ready to...
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for accepting. It was always a pleasure. I have really overstepped my boundaries this time. We are really, really out of time. Time would have flown so quickly. I just look up thinking that it's about 10 minutes to 12, and to 11. I realize it's 10 minutes past 11, 20 minutes way over time. My name is Sandra Queeley, artist, and it was a pleasure. And I do hope that you would continue to adhere to the COVID protocols. Social distancing is a must, hand sanitizing, and I see that people are going out and becoming vaccinated. There are rules and protocols, and I would hope that you continue to do so, and I look forward to doing this again for next week, Friday. Stay tuned to Win FM. Voices is up next.